All right, so welcome to Sunday morning sitting group at InsightLA. My name is Trudy. I'm the guiding teacher here, and I haven't been here for a couple weeks, so I'm really happy to be back and to see you all again. And you too, Ashley. Ashley, I thought I got a message from you about Sage being in the hospital. I can't find that message. It completely is disappeared.
She is, this will be her third psychiatric stay at 9 years old.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry that it got to that point. I'm really sorry.
It just hit a level, Wednesday morning that I had to say no more. And like,
Oh,
I can send you another message about it, but, yeah, so she's waiting
you.
for, in a room at another hospital. So she's just still at our local hospital. They moved her to a pediatric room. And, yeah, so, we're just waiting placement.
Okay, so please do, yeah, message me separately, and I can talk to you later if you want.
Thank you,
Okay,
Trudy.
everybody. Yeah, of course. Of course. So for any of you who may be new to this group this morning, we divide the time roughly into thirds. We're going to meditate now, and then we have some teaching, and then some chance for dialogue and conversation with each other. So, and also I want to say this is a very chat-friendly group. So if you have something to say, you can put it in the chat. I do prefer that you maybe limit what you put in the chat while during the time that I'm speaking, maybe limit it to questions that you have. And well, we're experimenting, always unfolding, seeing what works best here. And again, it's also fine if you want to turn your camera off while we're meditating, but I love to see your faces if you're willing to turn them back on afterwards. So let's sit together. So we begin by taking 3 deep, intentional breaths. Breathing in, deep, deep, long in breath. And releasing. And one more time, a deep breath in. And releasing any tension in the body, letting the shoulders lower as you breathe out. And one more time, breathing in the aliveness of this moment. And breathing out, relaxing. Relaxing. And then allowing the breath to flow in its own natural rhythm. And it's good to bring attention to the breath, to appreciate that the breath just breathes us and we don't have to make it happen. We can relax and trust. Trust that the out breath will be followed by another in breath. And that this is a trustworthy process. as long as we're alive. And if for any reason the breath is not a good rudder to guide your attention inward, for whatever reason, you can bring attention to the sensations in the body. And we can all do this together. Just sensing and feeling the aliveness of the body. And just gently moving your body back, maybe just a half an inch or an inch. Sitting back into this posture of receptivity. Allowing the whole body to relax with each out breath. And when the mind wanders away into thinking about things that came before this moment or may follow, just notice, is your body tipping forward again? And just gently moving back to receive this moment, to receive this breath. This is how we train our minds. Each time noticing there's been distraction, a movement away from being present with experience right here, right now. Each time this noticing happens, this is a moment of mindfulness, of mindful awareness, a moment to celebrate. Returning home, home to the heart. Just noticing what helps you stay grounded and present. Noticing what makes it hard to settle down. The stirrings and agitations of the body. And coming back to staying with the sense of ground, of being here, now. In this real and present way. And just gently slowing into the experience of breath, body, the movements of attention, and the awareness that observes, that is aware and awake to it all. And maybe sprinkling a little bit of gratitude on your experience, whatever it may be. Just the gratitude to be here, to be alive. In the gathering stillness. And the wonder of just being. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, no one we have to be. Just the wonder of this self, this being here. Yeah, so if you feel like turning on your cameras and I get to see you. Um, that was a little bit longer than we usually sit because I kind of got into it and lost track of time. Sorry about that. But I gave you more time to settle in. Um, yeah, so this morning I wanted to talk about how, how we come through the suffering in our lives. And this is a very live topic for me these days as I'm recovering from what really became a serious illness, and very grateful to be here, to be alive, and to be getting better and better. I mean, we say getting better, and we send these get well cards that say, get better soon. And then but from our Dharma perspective, how could we be better than we already are, right? Um, we just are who we are, but we can get well, and I'm getting well. I'm very happy about that. But it really has made me reflect a lot on just how we humans get through times of suffering and disappointment uh, and the various tragedies of our lives. How do we do this? And our practice, of course, helps us do this. And I have been immensely grateful for the decades of meditation practice and teaching and the call. I mean, it's really, to sit in the teacher's seat means you're taking responsibility for living these teachings and for embodying them. And believe me, you notice all the ways in which you may sort of fall short of that. And that's a good thing. It's humbling. It's a good thing. And you notice it in your own practice too. Um, and many of you are very mature people and dedicated, committed practitioners. You've been doing this for quite a while. And I'm curious, and hopefully we'll have a chance for me to hear from you. Like, how do you navigate the difficulties in your life? Because life will have difficulties. It's woven into it. This is what we call it samsara, whether we call it the first noble truth. I think, you're familiar with the first teaching that the Buddha gave was about these four truths of life. And it's said that when he gave these teachings, the whole world rumbled and thundered. And, it was just like this amazing event. And I know for me, when I heard the teaching about the first noble truth and understanding, that just pain is part of life, it was very relieving. It was just understanding that it wasn't my fault, that it wasn't the wrong choice of life that I was in, that our physical bodies and our relationships and all our life circumstances are fragile and subject to change. And we're always accommodating to that. And that's how it is. That's how it is. And, the second truth is about the mind's struggle in response to challenge. At one point when I was in the hospital in Costa Rica, I got very close to my wound care doctor because she came every day. And the nutritionist who asked you what you wanted to eat, and she was my favorite, I have to admit. And I think I was one of her favorite patients, because when she would walk into the hospital room, I would just be overjoyed. I wanted to hear all about the food that we were going to get to eat. I mean, this is after, about halfway through the stay when I was interested in eating. But my mind was struggling with my situation, I mean, whoever heard of, I spent almost 6 weeks in Costa Rica without even going swimming or hiking or anything that you would consider that kind of fun. And I was complaining. This was probably, I don't know, a week in. I was complaining. I was better enough to complain to my wound care doctor about, it's going to be months until I can swim again. And those of you who know me, the water is really where I love to be. And she just looked at me, you know, and she said, Trudy, less than 30% of people survive what you had. And that was what we call in Zen a turning word. Like when she said that, the complaining just fell away. And it was like, okay, okay. I had what we would call an attitude adjustment or an insight. um, and realized, yes, this is all about gratitude now, gratitude for being alive. And that's the third truth, that this suffering can end, that we can drop our struggles and our fighting with reality. We can really have a peaceful mind, a non-struggling mind. It's a possibility. It's probably not a 24/7 possibility, but it's something that we know and we can return to reliably. And the program for learning how to reliably return to it is what's called the fourth truth or way of living, fact of life, the Eightfold Path. You know, and that is, I'm not going to, this is not a class on the Eightfold Path right now, but just to say wise understanding, realizing the cause of suffering, that it's really our attachment to ourselves and what our agendas and what we want and dreamed and imagined for our lives, versus who we actually are and what life actually is, a wise intention, our motivation to end suffering for ourselves and others as much as possible, wise speech, speaking in a way that's clear and that cultivates clarity, wise action, how we behave in the world, ways that we behave to maintain clarity and congruity, that sense of being integrated, and a wise livelihood. And that just means not earning our money by doing things that harm people, you know, maybe, I don't know, dealing drugs, things like that, that really aren't so good for people. And wise concentration, what we just practiced in our meditation, cultivating a steady and focused and more ease-filled mind and heart. And then, of course, wise mindfulness, cultivating alert, balanced attention. So this is how we can, you know, this is sort of the general framework for how we can live the Dharma, right? In our incarnation, in whatever form of struggle or suffering or situation that you or I find ourselves in, we don't turn away from it. That's the challenging part. We don't turn away from it. We actually gaze at it, towards it. And we just, you know, as the poet Naomi Shihab Nye says, we take the measure of the cloth. We understand that our suffering is not our fault, that it's not a mistake, that it's just part of life, of impermanence, that there's joy and there's sorrow and there's, was it Susan Sontag? Was it the book Illness as Metaphor? Came out in the 70s, where she talked about the kingdom of the sick and the kingdom of the well. You know, we have our sojourns in each kingdom. And when you're in one, you're very far away from the other one. You know, when you're well, you don't think about being in the hospital or anything like that. When you're sick, you feel pretty exiled from the everyday busy life that you had before. So there's this duality that is the nature of our existence. And I think what helps is this practice that, you know, as we learn to include more and more and more in our loving awareness, what happens is that we can hold these opposites in our heart, the joy, the sorrow, the love, the hate. Any of you who live in an intimate relationship, you know that love and hate succeed each other, sometimes very rapidly. I know there's moments when, you know, Jack, who has been the most steady, loving husband throughout all of this, will do or say something. And I just feel like I'm 5 years old saying, I hate you. And, you know, these moments, they happen. Now, they pass very quickly for me at this point in my life, thank goodness. And I can laugh about them, but but it's real. We have what we call ambivalence, toward people. But ambivalence has another meaning in the psychoanalytic tradition. Ambivalence means that ability to hold both, like ambidextrous, both, ambi, that prefix that means both, that we have the capacity to hold them both in the same heart, and that they can even peacefully coexist, because we can, with some self-compassion, we can recognize, oh, wow, okay, I'm oscillating. My moods are changing. And yet there's one thing. What is the one clear thing that remains through all the ups and downs of our existence? What is it? You know what it is. This is a deep koan. This is actually a koan that was a calligraphy written on the wall of the meditation hall of my first teacher. He had this poem. It was called The Human Root. Actually, I want to read it to you. I can find it, I think, in a second. Hold on. And he had made a calligraphy out of this poem. And it goes like this: coming empty-handed, going empty-handed. That is human. When you're born, where do you come from? When you die, where do you go? Life is like a floating cloud which appears. Death is like a floating cloud that disappears. The floating cloud itself originally does not exist. Life and death, coming and going, are also like that. But there is one thing which always remains clear. It's pure and clear, not depending on life and death. And this is the koan. This is what he had written in his beautiful calligraphy on the wall. Then what is the one pure and clear thing? So this actually, we would do our sitting meditation, and then we would do a round of walking meditation. And so you would walk past this poem and past this question, what is the one pure and clear thing, many, many times in the course of a retreat. So it really functioned like you didn't even have to concentrate to keep it in your mind. It was just there on the wall, and you passed it over and over. And in the boredom of long meditation retreats, you would read anything that your eyes would light upon. And so I ask you, what is that one pure and clear thing? I know you know. And if you want to put it in the chat, I will open the chat and take a look. Oh, thanks for putting the poem, Bernard. Anybody want to guess? Okay, you're shy. What is the one pure and clear thing? You all have it. You all use it. You all experience it all the time. What is it that knows the breath, Will? You have to write it down. I can't hear you. What knows? Yes, thank you. Thank you, Robert. Awareness knows the breath. Awareness knows each other. Awareness knows what's happening. And that really is the one pure and clear thing. And that's what helps us, hold this duality. It's held in awareness. It's held in loving awareness. And we do these practices so simple that it's hard to believe that they're actually powerful, just sitting together and being reminded to breathe or to sit back and not, just receive the moment of life. These practices steady us, and they actually wake up our great heart of compassion for all of us who are going through this. in this life. That's what they do. And so what also helps us is spiritual friendship, fellowship, sangha, community, doing this together. You know, I probably wouldn't be spending this time on this particular Sunday morning practicing and teaching and reflecting and sort of immersing myself in the Dharma. I would be trying to get my computer guy to come over or something like that. So do you know what I'm saying? Like, we really need each other to do this. And that's why the Buddha, that's why he made it 3 refuges, not just awareness and the teachings, but the community too. And, you know, in the early days, maybe the first couple decades of my practice, the community piece was never talked about very much. It was always talking about the Buddha, the Dharma, the teachings, and I think that's because it was primarily, there were primarily male teachers back then. When I started out, the women teachers were few and far between. So there really wasn't much emphasis on the relationality of this practice and even though the Buddha was really clear, you know, somebody asked at one point, Ananda, his cousin who was his attendant, asked him, and I'm sure many of you have heard this, it's really wonderful teaching. Ananda asked him, what would you say that spiritual friendship, that, you know, spiritual fellowship, friendship is half of our spiritual life? And the Buddha said, no, Ananda, it's the whole thing. It's all of it. It's everything. And then he listed all maybe I'll share them with you next time. Then he listed all these qualities of, you know, what is a spiritual friend. My favorite quality, maybe it's because how I'm feeling so much of the time right now, you know, healing takes a lot of energy. One of the things he said is, when you choose your friends wisely, and don't choose friends who are lethargic. I thought that's an interesting thing, lethargic. But, you know, he means, you know, what you're doing, taking the time, taking the trouble to practice. It's not easy. We used to have tons of basics classes, beginner classes at InsightLA, and lots of people, especially, you know, when mindfulness was really a thing. Whoa, excuse me. I had a pillow here blocking the light and it just fell down. When mindfulness was really very, very popular, I mean, now I think it's more intermittent fasting or something, whatever the fad is of the moment. Mindfulness was very trendy. And so we had all these beginner classes. And then the teachers were noticing, well, people weren't necessarily coming back for like the next level of practice or classes. And I was just like, that's because it's hard. They hear about mindfulness and they think, oh, that's a cool thing. Everyone's doing it. I want to try it. But then when you actually practice, it's hard. You have to face yourself. You have to look at your patterns of behavior. You have to really see the impact of who you are on other people, because mindfulness isn't just being mindfulness of what's going on in here or in here in our hearts or guts. Mindfulness is out here as well. Our relationship to other people, to events, to things in our life. So what helps us face these difficulties and gives us the confidence that we can do it, because yes, you can do it, is our spiritual friendship and connection and support of each other. And I don't believe, you know, there's some saying you will never be given more suffering than you can handle, or there's some saying about that. I'm not sure that's true, actually. I think that, yes, we can be given very much more than we feel we can handle, but that's where we need each other. That's where each other comes in. That we're in it together. And this is really the bodhisattva contribution to life, that we're in it together, that we're here to support and help each other. And that just by being here and practicing together, we're doing that. We're doing that. So let's see what else I wanted to share with you this morning. So then, as mature practitioners, what would it mean to have the happiness that the Buddha talked about? And I think when the Buddha talked about happiness, he really wasn't talking about the happiness about something. I think he was really talking about the happiness of just being, the ability to just exist with contentment and peacefulness, just that. And then having a way to show our compassion, our kindness, each one of us showing other people that it's possible through our encouragement of them and through the way we meet our own life circumstances. Like, there are people who are incarcerated who are practicing the Dharma and who are saying, my body is in prison, but my mind is free. That's a huge, huge thing to say. That's a huge blessing to have inner freedom. And so I think it's really good for us to reflect on what allows us to live that way, to live at least more that way, because our living that way definitely benefits the world. I do believe that. I want to read you a story. I found this on the internet, and the subject was legal studies first lecture. This is like the first, you just started law school, you're in the lecture hall, it's your first lecture. And the professor walks into the lecture hall and looks around and sees a student and says, hey, you there in the 8th row, can you tell me your name? And the student says, Jason. And the professor asks him, please leave my lecture. I don't want to see you in my lecture hall. And everybody is silent. The student, very irritated, slowly packs up his things and stands up. Faster, please, the professor says. And he doesn't dare say anything. He just, slinks out of the lecture hall, right? And the professor keeps looking around. And of course, everybody's scared. This is their first class. And then he asks the group, why are there laws? All quiet, everyone looking at each other. What are laws for? He asks again. And then somebody volunteers social order. And then a student says to protect a person's personal rights. And another says so that you can rely on the state, but the professor is not satisfied. Justice, calls out a student. And the professor is smiling. She has his attention. Thank you very much, he says. Did I behave unfairly toward your classmate earlier? Everyone nods. Indeed, I did. Why didn't anybody protest? Why didn't any of you try to stop me? Why didn't you prevent this injustice? He said. Nobody answered. What you just learned, you would not have understood in 1,000 hours of lectures if you hadn't lived it. You didn't say anything because you weren't affected yourself. This attitude speaks against you and against life. You think as long as it doesn't concern you, it's none of your business. But I'm telling you, if you don't say anything today and you don't bring about justice, then one day you too will experience injustice and no one will stand up for you. Justice lives through us all. We have to fight for it. This is very much like, I think it's Niemöller, that quote on the Vietnam Memorial monument from a German resistor in Nazi Germany who actually died for it eventually. In life and at work, we often live next to each other instead of with each other. We console ourselves that the problems of others are none of our business. We go home and we're glad that we were spared. I mean, how many times have you said to yourself, this is Trudy speaking, how many times have you said to yourself there, but for the grace of God, go I. But love also requires standing up for others. Every day, an injustice happens in business, in sports, in society, on the roads. Relying on someone to sort it out is not enough. It's our duty to be there for others, standing up and speaking for others when they cannot. So this is another version of, turning toward the difficult, being here for each other, the freedom that we have as humans. And so this is most of what I want to share with you this morning.